Dzień dobry Państwu. Witamy serdecznie na naszym projekcie Polskiej Izby Przemysłu Chemicznego Chemia 4.0. Dużo tematów o tym, co dzisiaj najnowocześniejsze, co dzisiaj stanowić będzie o przyszłości branży chemicznej, nie tylko w ujęciu krajowym, ale także międzynarodowym, bo to w digitalizacji upatrujemy te najważniejsze narzędzia mające pomóc nam w osiągnięciu wielu celów klimatycznych z jednej strony, z drugiej strony tych celów trudnych, regulacyjnych, na przykład związanych z Europejskim Zielonym Ładem, ale także wspomagać w budowie konkurencyjności pozycji branży chemicznej właśnie na arenie międzynarodowej. To dzisiaj od tej branży zależy wiele, tak naprawdę, w jaki sposób kształtują się gospodarki poszczególnych krajów, w jaki sposób te gospodarki będą odbudowywane po trudnym czasie pandemii, ale także w obecnym czasie trudnym, spowodowanym także sytuacją i wojną w Ukrainie, gdzie następuje totalne przemodelowanie rynków. Dzisiaj to zjawisko digitalizacji jest rozumiane w przeróżny sposób, ale jak się okazuje, w przemyśle chemicznym jest obecne od bardzo długiego czasu, nabiera nowego znaczenia, nabiera zupełnie nowego tempa. I od tempa rozwoju tej digitalizacji będzie także zależało właśnie rozwój polskich przedsiębiorstw chemicznych i w ogóle przedsiębiorstw chemicznych. Zatem dużo wyzwań przed digitalizacją i przed samą branżą chemiczną. A w dzisiejszej rozmowie gościem moim i Państwa jest Mark Loughran, President of Central and Eastern Europe Honeywell. Hi Mark.
Hi,
It's good that you are here.
Yeah, thank you. Real pleasure to be here, and I'm really excited to be with you and the audience.
Okay, thank you for that you are with us, and Honeywell as a company is a partner of our project Chemistry 4.0. We started the big project as a one project in industry, promoting the ideas of 4.0, for these digitalization ideas. I mean, from one side to present the best solutions, to best practices to our companies, to the market, but from the other side also to make them closer to each other with the best solutions. One side to present companies which are completely out of that, what's going on, what's modern, what's on the tip top of the best solutions and technologies in digitalization, and what we can use for chemical industry to make the digitalization real. I mean that especially from that point of what is now the top topic of almost any heavy industry, especially in Europe, which is decarbonization. We talk a lot about net zero carbon goals we have in front of us in our close years. And before our conversation here, we were also talking about that time is running really fast.
Really fast.
So, really fast. And digitalization can help us with achieving the goals of all this digitalization. How does Honeywell exactly see the role of this digitalization? I can even say that going to the slogan you have, like here, the future is what we make it. So it's like that, it's the future is so close that we can just take it, really.
Well, we can nearly touch it, yeah, the future.
We can touch it. So if we would like to touch it, so how Honeywell see the role of digitalization in decarbonization?
Look, I think what's really important at the moment is if you want to be able to decarbonize, you need to be able to measure, you need to be able to make some decisions as a result of that measurements, and then you need to be able to optimize or control a system as a result of that. Yeah, so you need to get this virtuous circle. So if you think about either Honeywell, but also think about the challenges in the industry. For years and years, we've had a whole load of sensors and readings and information coming from, say, like chemical industry plants or energy industry plants or buildings. Doesn't matter exactly what it is. What matters is we've got a lot of information coming out of those places. We've also got, and Honeywell at its heart is a sensors and control company, yeah? We've got a lot of control, automation and control systems that then can control either the chemistry, the chemical plant, or the refinery, or the building. Yeah, this is right at the core of what we're able to do. Sensors and information and controls.
Now, look at that, when you've got so complicated industry like chemistry, when we have a lot of processes connected to each other, with raw materials, basic materials, feedstocks coming from one site, from one unit to another unit. So
But this is the excitement of the moment, right? With digital.
Exactly.
So previously, and sometimes at the moment, a lot of that would then, the decisions from the information would be made by a human, or they would be assisted by a human and some basic level of programs. And of course, the experience of those people are everything and really important in that process. But more and more, either the more sophisticated software, digital software is being produced, or we get into the world of digital twins, right? And what is a digital twin? A digital twin is like a digital replica on a model of, say, this the chemical processes, factories, and all the process around that. But for that model to come alive, it's got to have the feeding of information into it. This is where the information from the sensors into the digital model really matter. And then, through training the algorithms and the program that's within that digital model, decisions can be taken over vast amounts of pieces of data. It can look at like the and then it can make a change on the output to the controls, and then it can look at the result. So then you get this kind of beautiful circle, and what it allows to do over vast amount of data is say, hey, when these variables looked a bit like this, there was a better quality of ethanol produced, or when these variables look like this, the CO2 emissions were less. But the real trick, how do you get the balance between the two? The output of what the chemical factory or process is meant to be, and reducing whatever emissions you feel is really important, like CO2, or it could be methane, it could be something else, and getting the balance between them. Now, you, me, and 100 of our best scientists could not solve that on a whiteboard or in any other way. You've got to have fantastic knowledge within these algorithms in order to do that. So I think actually the digital overlay on top of that will allow us to get these balances. And effectively what it's doing is, through trial and error and thousands of bits of data, it's looking at what was the result, what was the balance of the output on the CO2 or the methane, making a change on the control, and it will balance it towards whatever direction the operator put it. I think in the first phase of this, which we're really in at the moment, there's still a lot of knowledge coming in also from the people in the factory, and I think that will continue. But more and more this automation and the digital twins, I think, can make a terrific example. Why I joined Honeywell was right for this reason. You know, previously I was in Microsoft, so, you know, right in the pure digital cloud space. And now, being right in a company that's super deep into industry, you really see the difference that it can make. Because if you want to decarbonize and still get the outputs that any industry, factory or organization needs, because there has to be the balance, because they have to be able to make their return on their investment, you need this deep industry knowledge. And you know, that's what we're all about, combining the deep industry knowledge with the digitalization knowledge.
Okay, so knowledge is the one thing, but we can even say that the digital twin is a kind of a simulator, or could be a kind of a simulator, special simulator.
Yes.
When you can, I can even say that could be a big lab of your huge unit. A small process, you can of course go with that to the lab, but with a digital twin, you can test any parameter of a process you even want.
Yes.
Eliminating risks, predictive risks, and in some cases, of course, reduce some costs, maybe etc. Another issue of some.
Yes, because first it allows the digital twin, the simulator, allows you to measure it. So you can measure. You're absolutely right. You can disconnect it from the controls back in the system, and you can simulate, and you can see what happens, and you can connect it back to the controls, and you can see what really happened. And then as a result of that learning, you can learn and learn and learn and learn, and then optimize against whatever you want to optimize for. And by the way, I think this is the answer to a whole load of the challenges that we have, be they in a chemical factory, or look at this building, or think about someone who's got, say, we're working with a pharmaceutical company at the moment. Think about a company that's got 20 factories over the European Union. We're working with them on their factories at the moment to put in like an energy digital twin, So this isn't about the chemical processes there, this is about the use of energy and electricity. So it basically measures all the times that it's used. It also picks up a lot of other pieces of information and it optimizes for the factory against that. Now, imagine that then replicated on the next one, the next one, the next one, the next one. We reckon the savings from that are around 25 to 35%. And that's purely on the energy uses without getting into the processes. If you get into the processes with companies like Czech and others, we're doing a lot of work on their process automation and the optimization of that, and then you can start looking at the CO2 reduction or other reductions. So there's lots of different ways. People talk a lot about smart cities. Smart cities is exactly the same idea. It's effectively a whole load of sensors that happens to measure lots of different parts of the city infrastructure, from buildings to traffic lights to waste disposal, whatever. And then in the middle of it, there's like a simulator, a digital twin there, and then it makes decisions, some of it human decisions, some of it, some of it supported by algorithms, and some of it supported by optimization decisions, and then the control systems implement. So this sensors measure stuff, control systems that can change the outcome, and then this software layer on top of that. This is a super exciting time for us, and for chemists, material scientists, chemical engineers. Sure. Wow. This is the moment for chemical engineers, if there ever was one.
Technologies and so on, of course, etc. All this digitalization case is really connected to really important issue, which is present in our everyday life right now, which is environmental, social, and governance, and ESG. I cannot even say that it became popular, but it's really important from 2 points of view. Our everyday private life, when we would like to live in eco atmosphere, eco environment, with eco solutions and so on. But from the other side, we have a lot of industries, heavy industries, and companies which have in front of them, there are a lot of especially environmental goals, social goals they have to fulfill, and they want to fulfill them. But of course, there are really difficult goals. Of course, because that's what we were talking about, that time is speeding really fast, and that's why the goals are really in close of us. So what can help us, what could help us from this digital point of view? I mean, is that real role of digitalization that can help companies and industries like chemical industry to achieve this idea, the goal of ESG?
Yeah, when I think about ESG, particularly the E, I think about the emissions and the energy. And we just touched on both of those from a digital point of view. But I think when you talk about ESG, the companies are making a lot of commitments as to where they are now and where they want to be in the future. You then have a lot of third-party organizations that are analyzing this and holding them to account. So actually, I think the measurement for a company of exactly where they are today is going to be super important. But if you're going to make progress against a goal, you need to make changes and impacts and make sure you deliver against it. So there's sort of examples that I talked about before, both with energy and the energy optimization, or emissions, and it depends what emission it is, whether it's CO2, whether it's methane, whether it's something else, whether it's better use of the feedstocks that they've got, if it's recycling, if it's how that's working and how the whole system's being put together.
And especially in a circular economy.
Yeah. So I think there's so many bits of information coming in, and there's so many control points. I think the digitalization right in the middle of that is going to be critical. But I think the fact that it needs to be measured, it needs to be optimized against that measurement, and then something needs to change in the system. This is where digitalization helps. You and me can do it if it's like 10 bits of information on one control panel. Maybe we can manage it if we're very experienced, if it's 20 pieces of information and 2 control panels. But what you and me can't cope with is hundreds of thousands of bits of information coming in every second, and maybe 200 different control parameters which could have thousands of permutations. How do you optimize that against either an emission outcome or an energy outcome that you want to do, while at the same time still delivering the core function of the plant. And I think that's the bit that we need to remember. ESG is super important for you, for me, for our families, for our children and their future. We want to be in that environment, but equally the economy needs to run.
Of course.
So this optimization, while still fulfilling the core purpose of the company, this is critical. And I think digitalization is the only way that that's going to happen.
Sure. Of course, achieving the goals from this digital point of view, you mentioned economy, that's one case, of course, but technology is the second one. I mean, from this economical point of view, everything can be okay, we can even say like that, but from technological point of view, it could be possible, it should be possible. So let's jump to that, okay? And let's talk a little bit about some goals which are strictly connected to Paris Agreement. And this Paris Agreement requirements, especially, are touching CO2 cases. I mean, like that. That from one side, it's a case of emissions that we would like to, we have to limit our emissions and reduce our emissions in the industry, in our processes, in our final use of our every good. So carbon footprint in every good we use every day will be really significant. So it's also connected to this ESG. But from the other side, from technological point of view, finally we have to do that somehow. So one of the cases is to capture CO2, and that's a huge case, especially from Honeywell. I saw your portfolio of the company of Honeywell, when you have a lot of references right now of the CO2 capture technologies around the world. What about that? What about the new solutions and technologies can really fulfill the goals of and requirements of Paris Agreement? Is it real to do it?
Yeah, so we have a lot of references of that around the world. And of course, with the processes that are still running today, capturing the carbon dioxide emission through the chimneys and the flues, this has got to be a must. And there's tremendous opportunity to do that. And there's a lot of spare storage space for CO2 around the world as well. So we believe that's absolutely possible to be done because the technology is here today. So we should be doing that everywhere. And there are the solutions to be able to store it, or in some cases use it. So that is alive and living. I think when we look at a number of the other agreements coming out of, say, Paris or the latest discussions, a lot of discussion on hydrogen. And I for one think that's going to be
tool number one right now.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be one, if not the most. You never want to predict something's going to be the most important, but it's going to be one of the few solutions that are the most important. And I think is it real, is it not? Well, we see real stuff. If you look in the UK, there's an East Coast project, a West Coast project. You look in the Amsterdam area, there's a massive project going on there, where they are really looking at the whole system. And I think this is what's really important. Getting hydrogen to a few big factories and converting them is, of course, possible to be done. It's hard, but you can see the route to it quite straightforwardly. The real challenge is scale over the whole population, yes, right? But I see, and we see in Europe, a number of these projects already, looking at the injection of it, looking at the mixing of it, looking at how to use old pipelines or different pipelines to get it to the houses. There's the point of the boilers. There's a number of universities that have already run in a few houses. They're now going to run over, some villages and towns, hydrogen infrastructure. So I think all the points of that are up and running. You asked about the technology right in the middle of it. From a Honeywell point of view, this is something I'm quite excited about. If you think back, catalysts we've been doing for maybe 100 years. Catalysts for the different sort of chemical processes. Of course, by improving and changing those, it can make a tremendous amount of difference to chemical processes, but also to the production of hydrogen. Membranes, we've been right in the center of the membrane business for around 40 years. And some of the most amazing developments are happening at the moment when we're combining this catalyst technology with membrane technology to then really allowing the production of hydrogen from water in an incredibly clean way. And we're working super hard on that at the moment. Obviously then you've got to solve the challenge of the electricity that's coming in order to power that, so we can move from the blue hydrogen to the fully green hydrogen. By the way, my view is that we should work really hard with getting the highest amount of blue hydrogen available while we can, working on all those infrastructure challenges to make sure we can get it from the production place to the houses, to the plants, maybe to the cars, or whatever the solutions will be. And then the network will be ready for the moment we're able to efficiently and at the right price point switch over to fully green hydrogen. So get the network, get the demand side right, and then it will be ready for when you switch it over. So that's the kind of view that I've got.
Okay, that's one of the steps, we can say like that, to have such amount of blue hydrogen that could fulfill the real needs of our industry. I mean that from that point of let's say cars, it could be really easy. Easy to fuel cars with hydrogen. That's okay. But when we look at the industry, which needs a lot of it. I mean, yearly could be billions of tons of hydrogen spent for our processes, especially in fertilizers, especially in petrochemicals. So hydrogen is everywhere in chemical processes and most of our organic goods we have, right?
Yeah.
But that blue could be a solution as a step.
On the demand side, yes.
Exactly.
Step.
But of course, we also have in mind that achieving the green, amount of it, it's so huge that it could not be possible to have it in 1 year even. But that's what you mentioned, getting through the blue to green, achieving the infrastructure, preparing the infrastructure, which is our storages, pipelines, etc., etc. So it could create a good solution and preparation for that green. But
it will drive the business case because the demand side will be there,
okay,
and it will drive the business case on the green side.
Okay, but let's touch it with CO2. Now, one of the most important things is how to get that CO2 from the processes, for example, how to capture them. Someone says that, okay, maybe CCS form with the storages also will be okay, but we know that it's not so. Much better could be maybe to connect with the hydrogen, the CO2, compose two of these compounds and try to react them, of course, with, and
turn it into some sort of
petrochemical products, of course, with some elimination of fossil fuels with that, right? Could there be a solution with that? Capturing hydrogen and then completely.
Look, if I think about some of the conversations, there's a mixture actually of the conversations from the companies that I talk to, and actually what you see happening in research and research grants through some, very, very competent chemical engineers and chemists, and the answer is probably both of those things. I think at the moment there's a lot of storage capacity, and you see a lot of companies want to use that storage capacity, and that looks sensible for the time being because we know how to do that in a very, very large scale. I was reading a report that said for the blue hydrogen that we think will be needed between now and 2050, something like that. It would only take up about 1% of the storage capacity that's around for CO2. Yeah, so there's a lot of space there. However, yes. I love what you said because we talked earlier about the circular economy. If there was a way to be found to then do something productive with that, wouldn't that be great? And I think this is where we need the help of academics partnering with companies like ours, partnering with partnering with governments, and I see that work starting. People are thinking about that. Have you seen some good solutions for that yet, or have you seen good ideas coming for this? You know, how you turn it, in the lab, in the lab. But you know, if you think, I mean, look at you and me. If we think back 20 years ago, what would have been seen in a lab and what we see today, it's remarkable. And so I think out of the lab and the minds of those people come these initiatives, and then we need the partnerships with industries to work out how to scale it. So, you know, it could be possible in 10 years' time. I hope it would be possible.
Or even faster. 20 years ago, you mentioned we had smartphones, mobile phones without color screens. Well, so it was without touchable screens. Well, that was crazy. We can say from that point of view of the history. But once again, the time is running really fast, and the speed of technology's improvement is really fast. That we can even think about it. That it's really possible that in a really close future we can organize our life around completely new technologies. Looking at the future as a kind of a green future, having in mind that that's what you said about 20 years ago. Again, having in mind in 5 years that 5 years ago, from that point of view, it was like that we had a lot of CO2 or something like that. Okay,
but still think about still today, because your question was a very powerful one. It was also about what is our position today. You know, today. Back to emissions and energy, and I see these projects, these are real. We can read a lot of stuff on the sensors. There are already quite sophisticated digital programs that can rationalize that and either reduce energy or reduce emissions, and it's linked to the control system, so we can do that autonomously with some people's help. Or think about what we just said about CO2 reduction from flumes and chimneys from the processes. That technology is here today, and there's enough storage in the world to deal with it. Hydrogen, I mean, these projects are really quite sophisticated, and we know how to make the blue. Of course, there's a lot of work to get the green to work at the scale and the economics, but by driving the blue, we'll do that. So actually, I think, you know, we need to be careful not to try and make everything so perfect we never quite get there. I think today we have a lot in our hands. I joined Honeywell last December, so it's like seven months or so for me. I mean, it's a privilege, and I've been amazed to see the real projects in sustainability. Once I joined Honeywell, this ESG and sustainability moved for me from being this kind of talk in the TV and the newspapers and, you know, an aspiration, to me understanding what's able to be done today. And actually, I've become far more impatient about it, because I really see what can really be done today, both from Honeywell, from some of our competitors. We're all, and the partnerships with organizations like yours, academics, there's some amazing work happening. So look, I think it's upon all of us, do what we can do today, and then really optimize it for this perfect future.
Okay, so finalizing that, digital or digitalization is a real solution for achieving the goals of even the most difficult goals which are in front of us.
I tell you, I see it with our customers. We have real examples that we can show people, and we are implementing this in our own factories and our own infrastructure. Within our company, it's real, and I see it.
We can even say that digitalization is not a kind of a tool or solution, because it's happening. It's real. Now it's happening.
Yeah, and these like digital models, because we mentioned about digital twins, and of course, you know, it's like you can have a very simple digital model, and you can have far more sophisticated versions. Again, I think it's the same thing. You can start off with a simple model, measure what you can measure, control what you can control, optimize what you can optimize. Actually, you know, you
and make decision
and do something as a result of that. Make the step forward. I can say once a company does that and sees the impact, they immediately want to then, how do you get it more sophisticated? How can you get a better outcome? What's the next step? And then what do you change in the process? This is where all those valuable knowledge of all the people who are chemical engineers and chemists and engineers come in, because then they'll see, oh, it's not just measuring, it's not just making a decision in the digital end, it's like, what can we do, say, with a catalyst, or how can we change a process, or what if we change the inputs, or the food stocks we're putting in? What if we change this? It's like, then you can change the whole thing, yeah, physically and digitally, and it's really exciting. So I think that's what we need to get into. But skilling people, this is what's really important within there. We need to invest in people so they can understand how to do this.
That's one of the most important things. Many times we can even forget about people around it. I can even say that the skills, 4.0 skills, which will be really significant for companies implementing the solution 4.0, right? So it's not like that. That's the automatization of processes, or robotization of the processes will completely eliminate our skills.
Absolutely not.
Still, people will need it in that.
Absolutely not. Because again, think of this process. Think about the chemical plant. Yeah, we talked about the measurements. We talked about the optimization of that and the controls. There's still a massive amount that can be changed from an engineering, from a chemical point of view in the process. But the beauty of it is those changes can be made. The system can then optimize against that. You can see if it was a better result than before, and then the people can go and do it again, and they will learn as a result. But we need to help people understand. Because, look, if you go back 20, 30 years ago, we were trained, I've got a PhD in organic chemistry, and I did some chemical engineering. And it was in that. A friend of mine learned something about programming. Someone else learned something about medicine or whatever. We were in our, swim lanes, to put it better, yeah? We were in our swim lanes. And today isn't about that. The chemical engineers or the chemists or the biochemists, they need to know a load of digital, not as much as the digital person, but they need to know 20% of it so that they can really leverage that. And vice versa, the digital people need to learn about the physical world, because I tell you, we live in the real world, we don't live in the digital world, right?
That's true.
So the digital bit has to interface with the real world. And this is where the sensors and controls are. This is what's interesting. That's what links the digital world to the physical world. So I think people have a massive role to play.
That's true. Okay, so the future is what we make it. So it's even closer than we can expect it, of course. Thank you for a really nice conversation about Chemistry 4.0 and our projects. Thank you, Honeywell, that you're with us. Moim i Państwa gościem naszej rozmowy w projekcie Chemii 4.0 był Mark Loughran, President Central and Eastern Europe, Honeywell. Thank you, Mark.
Bardzo dziękuję. Thank you very much for having me.